Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the PokerNews podcast. It is me, your girl, Sarah Herring, joined by Jeff Platt, very famous Jeff Platt. I don't know if you guys know this, but he was the ESPN host, sideline host, I'm not sure what they call it, presenter, whatever, of the World Series of Poker 2020. So kind of a big deal.
Kind of a big deal. And, you know, Sarah, I hate mentioning it, so I'm glad that you were able to bring it up on ESPN as the sideline reporter for the World Series of Poker main event. Was I the first choice for the assignment? No. Was I the second choice? No. But eventually they had to get down to me and put me on camera with that ESPN mic flag. So very fortunate for the opportunity, and it was a lot of fun. How was your Vegas experience, your second Vegas experience in the last 2 weeks or so?
Well, we have a lot to discuss. Obviously, there was a lot going on with this whole event, but I will say that I was, proud of you. I was excited to see you out there looking fly in your suit. But I wanted to ask you also, because obviously this is a big moment, I think, for any presenter, or a really cool opportunity. And it was also, though, a very bizarre situation overall. As an interviewer, as somebody, who's talking to people, they had you, doing this, even though everyone had been tested and everyone was in the bubble or whatever, for optics sakes or whatever it was, you guys were like on each side of the table basically. And it looked really difficult to do interviews like that. Can you just tell me what was going on?
Yeah, one of the most important notes from Nevada Gaming Commission before you start some kind of event like that is they really want to make sure that besides the players at the actual table, when we have the full final table, that everybody else is at least 6 feet away from each other, that social distancing is at the very least implied. Sarah, it might just be for PR purposes that we do the whole social distancing thing at that point, because to your point, we created this bubble. And so everybody who is in the final table room, in the Amazon room, had already been tested for COVID, had tested negative for COVID. But still, you see it in pro sports, not that you, Sarah, of course, are watching a ton, but you see these interviews and the sideline reporter is either up in the stands where the fans usually are, or they're about 6 feet away from the player. So it does create a much more interesting dynamic, a much more awkward dynamic, I would say. And Sarah, you've talked to some of these guys. Some of them are great, terrific interviews. They're very comfortable. They're outspoken. They project, they enunciate. Some of them you're like, what'd you say? And that's when you're standing like right next to them. When they're 6 feet away, you just kind of nod and smile and you're like, okay, I couldn't really hear them, but okay, we'll just keep moving on. So it was interesting. And to just throw another strange element into the mix, Damian Salas, our champion, was not comfortable with speaking English on camera. Could speak a little bit of English off camera. He could understand most when you spoke slowly and you enunciated, which is totally fine, which is totally cool. But we had to have a translator when dealing with him, and then I had to let him know the questions ahead of time to ask them in English, but he would still answer them in Spanish, and we'll subtitle it later. But I'm just standing there nodding and smiling. And he's probably telling me to, fuck off after everything I've said about him on the PokerNews podcast. I don't know, but I was just like, oh yeah, okay.
I had the same thing when I was interviewing Damian, because actually, and like no big deal, but kudos to us, I warned the World Series of Poker people before, the Headsup match. I was like, you're going to need to get a translator if you're actually expecting to get content from Damian. So they did hire a translator, which I appreciated, but I had the exact same experience where the translator was standing 6 feet away from him and he could hear her and she could hear him, but I'm literally just doe-eyed, like blank staring at him while he's answering. And it does make for a significantly less dynamic interview when you're not actually listening to what the person is saying. And I think some interviewers probably just conduct interviews like that anyways. But for me, certainly, it just felt very uncomfortable. And when you said that you couldn't hear what any of the guys were saying, I was thinking, oh my gosh, you poor thing, because it's just hard.
Well, yeah, I think you've always thrived off of listening to what the person has to say in their answer right before you meet. It's not like Sarah has her set list of questions and she just reads, okay, here's question number 2. I don't care what you said to question 1. You start the conversation a certain direction. You have certain topics that you want to hit, but you're definitely flowing. But there's no flow when you can't, understand anything that
In
he's
your
saying.
mind, there was like times where he's fairly long-winded a lot of the time. Like my mind, I would catch myself like drifting off into thinking about like, I'm really tired. Like, what am I, I wonder what my arm looks like right now. Or like, I don't just things. And then I would be like, whoa, come back to the moment, dude. Like you have to be present here.
To make matters even more awkward, just to add another layer to it, after it was all said and done, and we'll get into the particulars, but our plan was to interview both Damian and Joseph on camera at the same time. You go up to him, Joseph, nice run, sum up your experience. Damian, one quick question, and then bring in Jack. And so Damian, spoiler alert, he did beat Joseph Hebert heads up in the World Series of Poker main event to win that extra milli, to win that main event bracelet. And so right when he won, he took off. He just bailed.
Smoke bomb. So fast.
It just was gone. He said, excuse me, be right back. And then just ran over to where his family was celebrating. They were outside of the bubble. So, maybe I hope one of them did not have COVID and then just brought it back in. Whatever, we'll deal with that at another time. And then he's running off. He's celebrating with family. Joseph's walking off set. I'm like, Joseph, great run, man. He says, thanks, man. I appreciate it. I'm like, do you mind hanging around just for, this quick interview when Damian comes back? He'll be back in a minute or two. And Joseph said, no. And I'm like, no, you don't mind, or no, you don't want to do the interview. And he's like, nah, not right now. And I'm like, oh, it's not really like a scheduled thing. We kind of need you now. And so, I would never going to force anybody to do an interview if they don't want to. And you've always been the same way. And to Joseph's credit, he came back like 10 or 15 minutes later. It's like, okay, I'm here. I'm good to go. I'm like, I'm sorry. It was just me and Damian up there on stage.
You never did the interview with Joseph?
No, never did the interview with Joseph. We didn't,
oh my
it's gosh. Like a set. They kind of shoot it as if it's live. Okay, and so for them, that they can't take like a 15-minute break in the middle of all of it. It's just a little awkward for them.
That worked out great for me though, because I kept thinking timing wise, what am I going to do? I can't do this like 20-minute sit down with one of them and then like have the other one just sitting there waiting. But however it ended up, I ended up doing an interview with Joseph for like 20 minutes. And then Damian came in and I was like, how did this happen? Like, this makes no sense. But thank you, Jeff. I'm sorry.
Yes, it's definitely all me. He set that up, set that in motion for you.
So clearly we're teasing it up for you guys. Damian Salas did win, but it was not a fast or easy, everyone kept saying, and I knew it as soon as everyone started saying it was going to go really fast. I knew it was going to be epically slow.
You've heard that before at certain final tables. Yeah.
A million times we heard, it's going to be a couple of hours. It's going to be no big deal, but it was anything but that. And in fact, I think there was a period of time where we were fairly certain that Joseph Hebert would win. Damian Salas was extremely, extremely short stacked for a pretty good portion of I guess, sort of the middle of the tournament, and just doubled up quite a few times. Next thing we know, we look back, Joseph Hebert short, he doubles up. It really went until it got to the point, and maybe Jeff, as our, resident poker player, you can speak to this a little bit. It did ultimately get to the point where the blinds were just so high. Both of the players were playing with 10 big blinds essentially. And it was basically just like play a hand, get it all in, play two more hands, get it all in, which was interesting. That's really not something I've ever seen at a WSOP main event final table.
I think interesting is the perfect word for it, because they started with 500 big blinds each. And by the end, like you said, there are 20 big blinds on the table, 20 big blinds total on the table. We had guys there who had been covering just a ton of different events and they'd never seen a tournament get that short. Now, I think the structure was perfect. It was 20-minute levels. Their heads up, it's a free roll effectively, right? They're just, the winner's just given $1 million. So I don't think they need to have the deepest structure in the world. And they certainly didn't. I mean, this isn't like WSOP set it up this way. These were two guys who were, I guess, concerned with stack preservation. It's hard for us to comment when, we don't see most of the cards. It certainly looks like that maybe Hebert played a little too tight, but again, haven't seen any cards. Maybe the card distribution was just terrible, but he did have that 8-1, that 9-1 chip lead. And he had a couple opportunities it looked like to pounce on Salas. Credit to Damian Salas. You know, I've bashed him over and over again on the PokerNews podcast, mainly for his tanking. And he was great, I think, as far as pace of play is concerned. Sure, he took his time in the massive spots, but I've always said that is totally acceptable. He was great, and he played really, really well, and stack preservation was key for him. And I don't think he ever felt forced until the very, very end to just get the chips in. They were conservative, and I think that worked out in Salas's favor.
In fact, when I interviewed Hebert, he mentioned that he felt that Damian Salas played a lot more aggressively in the beginning than he anticipated, which I thought was interesting because I didn't think either of them played aggressively basically ever in the tournament.
Yeah, right, right.
But that being said, I wanted to ask you if you had this vibe being in the room, because I was outside of the room during the heads up play and just watching on the screen. And of course, we've been in this situation lots of times. I normally am in the room, but what I normally am dealing with is just as the night goes on and on, the fans and friends get drunker and drunker. And, you know, the key pivotal moments are mostly quiet, but there's still these like random, like, woo, and like, you know, it just, and the constant going back to the rail to review, you know, the 30 minutes ago hands, there's just a lot, there's a lot of action, I think, going on. And this was so pure. It was so in these moments where, you know, Damian Salas is, you know, counting out, you kind of got like 15 bigs and, you know, he like, how did he got himself in a spot where he's seeing a flop now? And does he want to continue? And, you know, you can see his eyes through his glasses. I can see like Joseph Hebert's nostrils flaring. Yeah. It was so quiet and so intense. And there is none of this finding out if you got bluffed last, you know, 30 minutes or whatever. It was just, for me, I really felt this return to sort of the poker OG feeling somehow, this like really pure form of poker.
Yeah, mano a mano. It's just like, let's just go at it with $1 million on the line. It was great. That's a great point that you make, that, you know, they're not always running to their friend with the iPad to see what this player had 30 minutes ago. They don't know what the other guy had unless a hand went to showdown. And that probably did make the heads up match more pure. And I think there were moments where both were certainly frustrated. I know Hebert was, every time Salas shipped, you could see Hebert kind of squeeze the cards and then be like, shh, you know, like another bad hand, and toss it into the muck. And I'm not saying that frustration got to him, that impacted his play, but it could have. And then Damian Salas just calm, cool, collected, whether he was at a 9-1 chip disadvantage or whether he had the lead, and then he you know, kind of let his emotions out when he won the thing.
I was totally thinking that too. I was like, is it just being rich? Like, is Damian Salas just like, I give zero fucks? Because I felt like that too. He was very, there was even some really kind of intense hands where you could sense, you know, Hebert had you know, in sort of his breath and certain things you could sense, like, this is very intense, this is happening. Yeah. And Damian did seem very like no fucks given or cool as a cucumber, I guess. Yeah, is a great way to explain it. And, you know, when we spoke to Joseph last week, he had mentioned this added pressure of being such a big chip leader coming into the final table, that, you know, that adds this sense of like, oh, you can't, you know, lose it all or whatever. It's just extra pressure. And I actually was thinking as he started to lose chips, you know, from the 8-1 chip disadvantage, that he was also getting frustrated, probably because, again, he's feeling this pressure of like, if you go from an 8-1 chip disadvantage to losing, WTF, man, right? Yeah,
that's so true. And I know at the end, and this might have been why he politely declined our interview offer at the end, I know he got the chips in with ace queen against Salas's king jack. And I think I could be wrong on this, but we're told the dealer that ace queen was his mom's favorite hand. And it was all a hashtag for Linda. You know, of course, we've gone over this incredible storyline throughout the course of, I guess, the last couple weeks by now. And to have that hand be the hand that you lose with, I don't blame him for being overwhelmed with emotions at the end. I don't blame him for being overwhelmed with emotions at the beginning, to your point. Just because it's a free roll doesn't mean there's not any pressure, right? I mean, he's got all of his friends, all of his family. There's $1 million up top. Every indication I have is that they did not shop at all. Now they might have made a deal for some of it and then played for the rest of it. I can't be 100% sure, but I do not think that they did. And so this is $1 million. This is a World Series of Poker main event bracelet. These are episodes that will air on ESPN. I mean, this is poker's biggest moment. As different as it is in 2020 or now 2021, it's still the World Series of Poker main event. So it's hard to overcome all of these emotions. And that's why I think Salas deserves so much credit.
He did even mention, Joseph mentioned that he was playing a hand. And this is actually something I have to give you and Kara and other people credit for, is that a lot of times they're shooting you guys doing stand-ups while the players are playing. So it's like super dead quiet. And then you guys are like over there talking about them, like, which is just uncomfortable on every level. But he said, oh, Jeff was like reading this letter that my mom had written me, or you read something his mom had written while he was playing. And he's like, I was so overwhelmed with emotion, like listening to what Jeff was saying. He's like, and it was really hard for me to kind of just keep myself together. And I was like, oh my gosh, poor Jeff. I was imagining you out there, like with everybody around.
It's so much harder in today's climate, right? To the point that you made earlier, when there are no fans out there, there's very limited staff and crew. So it is very quiet. So when I'm talking on set, I'm a decent amount of feet away from it. It doesn't matter. I mean, they can hear every single word. And so I remember doing that specific stand-up that you're referencing at the actual US final table, and filling everybody in with the story on his mom, and they texted back and forth, and she died a couple days later. And like, I can see in the monitor, kind of peripheral vision, like him kind of just jolt, like look over when I said hashtag for Linda. And it was just like, oh, I was just like, oh my God, it's just so, I feel so bad for him. I went up to him at break. I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make you emotional. He's like, it's cool. Completely
he was just so lovely. And I will say
great.
this at the, of course, I was rooting for the English speaker to win for lots of reasons. But after interviewing them both before and after, I have to say, Damian was really, really awesome. Also, he cried twice. Like, he was very much emotional in ways that I didn't expect him to be. And I definitely was thinking, oh, if I was a native Spanish speaker, this guy would be like a hero for me also. So it was a win-win.
He's a great representative, not only of Argentina, but he told me, which I eventually learned through a translator, that he sees it as representing the entire Latin American community. And I think he represented them very well, and it could be a nice boost to the international side of the game. And I think Joseph Hebert is a fantastic American, quote unquote, ambassador. I know we toss around that word a lot, but I think he represents the game very, very well. He treats everybody really well. I mean, he remembered our production assistants' names. Like, he's just that kind of guy. He's just that down to earth guy. I really enjoyed getting to know him. I think he'll be on the poker scene for years to come. And I know you enjoyed getting to know him as well.
For sure. And I have to say, I really I think there's a lot of, if I'm honest, fake humility that goes on, every time you do a winner interview or whatever, they're like, well, I just got really lucky. And you're like, okay, that's fine. But it's like the, sports stars who say like, oh, the team did a really good job or whatever. I don't know. It just seems like there's a lot of canned answers. But he said, I'm sure that they're going to have a lot of things to say about the way that I played when this comes out on ESPN, or mistakes that I made. But I did the best that I could. And I really feel proud of that, like, I feel like I did the best that I could in this situation. And I thought that's like it just felt very genuine and honest, that he knows, like, I'm not the best poker player or whatever, but I did the best that I could, and I'm proud of myself. And I thought, okay, I feel that. And I agree with you. I think in some ways we got kind of lucky that I do still feel like we got 2 ambassadors out of this World Series of Poker.
Yeah, that's true. It is going to be kind of hyped up as American champion versus international champion for the World Series of Poker main event bracelet. So I see it that way. And he should be proud. A 10K online, like to get to the final table there, to beat this live final table, to come in with all the pressure of being the chip leader, to make it to this heads up match, to do, countless interviews that like he was great. He should be proud of his entire journey.
And accepting, okay, I'm gonna have to stay in Vegas a few extra days because Damian couldn't, just being cool about everything. I thought he was just great. Well, we have tons more stories to cover, you guys. Obviously, that was the biggest news to come out of this last week, but there's been some other great news. So in terms of ambassadors and talking about the role of ambassadors, we discussed last week, I believe, and maybe it was the week before a little bit also, the potential nominations for the Hall of Fame, of which it has been decided. And I don't want to say I'm surprised, actually. This should have come very much as obvious. But I think maybe because he's been nominated so many times and hasn't gotten it, that I was, I wasn't expecting it. But Jeff, who is going to be the Hall of Fame inductee this year?
That would be one Huck Seed, the 4-time World Series of Poker bracelet winner, more than $7.5 million in tournament earnings, a prop bet wizard, a prop bet king, and, a fantastic cash game player as well. So we've seen him on that nomination list, as you said, seems like every single year forever. He finally gets in. Only one player or quote unquote builder was able to get in this year for 2020. And that was Huck Seed, 76 votes, 30 ballots cast by the living Hall of Fame members. They each got 10 points to distribute. Huck Seed got 76 points. Matt Savage in second with 51 points. Isai Scheinberg in third with 45. I'm curious, Sarah, if they brought in the media like they usually do, if that would have shifted the vote in any way. We can talk to Chad about that next week. It's good to see our guy Matt Savage up there in the top 2. It's only a matter of time before he gets into the Poker Hall of Fame. It's a well-deserved induction for Huck Seed. It will be well-deserved for Matt Savage. Same can be said for Isai Scheinberg. Same can be said for Ellie Lesser. Same for Antonio. Same for Lon and Norman. So they'll get there eventually. Same cannot be said for Chris Ferguson. And it was great to see that he only had 3 votes.
He was at the very bottom.
So Seed is in. I hope that in the future, Sarah, we will induct more and more people, not just 1 per year, not just 2 per year. There are a lot of people who are, who just need to get in now, and there's going to be a load of people who need to get in the near future. So let's raise it up a little bit. But I'm happy for Huck Seed, and I'm also happy for Matt Savage because this is a great sign that he will get in the very near future.
And I loved being able to see the actual votes. I've never in the history before you just find out who won and, go with it. And it was really cool to see how the votes kind of laid out and actually that it wasn't really even close at all. It was like it seemed like Huck Seed was clearly a front runner. And, I thought, and it gave me a lot of hope for who will be coming next. And I think it must've been some reassurance, at least for those guys that didn't get it this year, that clearly it's coming. And I did see a lot of, talk on the poker Twitter sphere about maybe the media should be involved or maybe they shouldn't. And, I think in terms of how things have gone this year, I thought it was in my opinion, it was cool to go back to this sort of OGs. And I also think maybe that's part of how Huck did get in, because maybe he was part of this. He hasn't done as much maybe in the last 10 or 15 years, since the boom, post boom. I don't think he's been as big of a player. And so I think maybe having the OGs be in charge, they remember him maybe in a way slightly different than a lot of the younger, for example, media people do.
Yeah, I could see that. And, for this year, you want to mix it up and just have the living Hall of Fame members do it. I guess that's fine. I'd like to see the media more involved in the future. It does seem a little bit like, and I've heard this on some other podcasts as well. And again, we'll ask Chad about this, that the king, Doyle Brunson, maybe a little too much sway as far as, telling people who to vote for. Maybe he's just had that sway in the past over some, of course, not all of the Hall of Fame members. I would like to see more media members have a vote in the future. This is how, sports does it. Basketball Hall of Fame, Baseball Hall of Fame, Football Hall of Fame, et cetera. I think you need the voice of the media in the mix. But for this year, you go with the OGs and Huck Seed gets in. I think that's awesome.
We keep it simple. This year. We've got enough problems to deal with.
That's true.
Well, super, super shocking news that I guess we should have anticipated. We should have seen this one coming. Basically, everyone that PokerStars had a partnership with, there has been, with the exception of Leo Fernandez.
Yeah, Leo.
There's been splitting between PokerStars and most of its ambassadors in the last 5 or 6 years, and finally a split between Chris Moneymaker and PokerStars.
This surprised me as well. I mean, you said it. We've seen so many ambassadors, representatives split from PokerStars. This still surprises me, and this certainly makes me believe that it was a Chris Moneymaker decision. Now, sure, in renegotiations, they could have offered less money, and so when he decides to leave, he's just turning that kind of offer down, or he could have another opportunity, or he just, he doesn't want to travel as much in the future. I think PokerStars still benefited greatly from having Chris Moneymaker as their, almost premier ambassador. That Moneymaker tour that he put on that gave away a platinum pass to the PokerStars Players Championship. I mean, or multiple platinum passes, I should say. That drew so many people across the country to his little, like $86 buy-in tournaments. I think it was so great for the game. I think it was so great for PokerStars from a marketing standpoint. And Sarah, every site wants to have an impact in the United States. The doors are going to open eventually. It is taking a very, 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 very long time. But soon enough, all the sites will be here in some form or fashion. And this is where the big money lies. So I think Chris Moneymaker was certainly somebody that PokerStars wanted to hang on to. Sure, they're looking to go into a different direction overall as far as ambassadors are concerned. But I genuinely believe Chris when he says, this is kind of my plan. This is my decision to move away from PokerStars, to be a little less involved in poker, it seems. And then, Chris has always loved sports betting. I'm sure plenty of opportunities could await him in that kind of field. So hats off to Moneymaker. I mean, to be with PokerStars for what now, like 17 years, and to again, just represent the game so well. We throw around the word ambassador way too much. We've debated the definition of it 1,000 times, but he was certainly a terrific ambassador for the game.
For sure. And I think he has tons of qualities that are really underrated, in fact, because I think he's very humble. I think he's, just approachable, but he also is really funny and clever. And there was just lots of things getting to know him amongst all of the years that I realized I think he's just very underrated in a lot of things. He's just a really, really interesting person who I get family is very important to him. And I know he has a daughter, I want to say, who has autism, and he's very active in the charity community and very active in pursuing, I guess, not like finding a cure, but, finding like rehabilitation and different things, to help kids with autism. But I also think, he spent a lot of time, you talk about the Moneymaker tour, and a lot of time in the United States, really pushing for, bringing online poker back to the United States. I think he was really one of the main focuses for PokerStars and even all of these different alliances that were trying to bring poker back to the US were using, I think, a lot of his time and energy, which we all really appreciated. But I could see how at a certain point, you like burn out a little bit, and he's a family guy and he's probably seeing his children grow up and realizing like, okay, I've got to nip this in the bud and spend the rest of the time I have with my kids.
I mean, you've traveled probably as much as he has. And now, you've got little Vera there. Like imagine, if PokerNews called you and they're like, hey, Sarah, okay, so we're going to have you do Spain at the beginning of February, then Vegas at the end of February, then go off to Australia in March. I mean, you'd be like, okay, it's my job, but I do have a family here. And so I certainly see how the allure of travel, that level of allure gets lower and lower throughout the years.
Yes, you get all old and you just miss your babies.
Right. You were away from her for what, one night?
Oh my gosh,
just dying to get back.
Yes. I was like in the car on the way home, like, oh my God, this is the longest car ride ever. Well, we have one more quick news story to cover. So some of the team from PokerNews that was there with us at the WSOP main event final table Headsup championship immediately left the championship to return to the Venetian to finish out the MSPT at the Venetian. And big name, actually. Yeah. Right? Wait.
Yeah. That would be James Carroll winning the MSPT Venetian 1100 for more than $180,000. A guy you always see pop up at all of these mid-major events. Great turnout, more than 1,000 players. during a global pandemic for an $1,100 event. I mean, that is strong. You know, the MSPT is kind of setting the tone as far as live events are concerned as we start our comeback into live poker throughout these COVID times. And it seems like nice, solid restrictions are in place, and they're drawing a lot of players. Props to James Carroll for shipping that 180K.
There it is. I thought he just won something else recently. But yeah, and it's interesting. I was just talking to someone else last night about the person who started the MSPT and kind of what they're doing. And it feels like there's a lot of visionaries, if you will, involved in this organization. And obviously, I'm just really excited about anything that has to do with pushing poker in the United States. I want to do more tour stops in the United States. We need to see more, poker love here in the United States. So we're all about that MSPT. Jeff, what do you have going on in your life the rest of the week?
Got a little bit of GGPoker WSOP Circuit 10K Headsup Championship featuring Lena 900, Nicholas Aztet. I'll be on the call with Hanks on GGPoker's YouTube channel on Saturday. And then High Stakes Feud, Daniel Negreanu versus Doug Polk. That continues today, Wednesday, the time we're taping this podcast. And I'll be on Friday with Brent and Amanda Negreanu. We'll do a little happy hour stream. We'll have some cocktails. It'll be good time. So that's kind of
while Daniel's playing.
Yeah. Every Friday we just basically sit back and drink and occasionally call a poker hand. You would love it. This would be the one stream that I think you would enjoy.
I should be tuning into. Of course, it's like Friday night. I'm such a loser. Golly.
Friday afternoon, but to get into Friday night, come by for a couple minutes. What do you have going on?
Check it out.
In your world?
Nothing, guys. Don't worry about me. I'm just over here, planning the rest of my life. It's so weird to see how things are coming together. It does seem like events are happening. People are looking for coverage at their events. And I'm like, are we doing this, guys? Are we doing this in 2021? I don't know.
Speaking of events, I'm just seeing this press release now from the World Series of Poker. We had known for the last couple of days that they were going to fire up more online circuit series for 2021. And they've made a pretty big announcement here that they will have a circuit series every single month. 8 of those series will give away 12 World Series of Poker circuit rings. 4 of them will be what they call a super circuit. So like the winter online super circuit starting January 14th, and they will give away 18 World Series of Poker circuit rings. I say giveaway, you kind of have to earn those things by winning a tournament, but you know what I mean. They will also have a year-end event, the WSOP Online Circuit Championship, 256 entrants competing for the $250,000 prize pool. So that's a $250K free roll at the end of the year. And then it looks like a monthly $25K free roll, a $10K WSOP Circuit Player of the Month. So this is pretty big for poker, I would say, and I'm sure an article will be up on PokerNews.com by the time that we post this podcast. So there you have it, the WSOP
huge.
Circuit.
Especially if you're able to play on WSOP.com.
Right. And along those lines, I see an additional 13th online circuit event is earmarked pending launch of the WSOP.com service in a newly regulated market.
Which we know is not going to be Delaware,
not Texas,
West Virginia.
I think it will be Pennsylvania, I guess.
I just saw an article and I'm trying to remember where it was. They were like, and it will not be here. And I was like,
Pennsylvania will still not be able to merge with Nevada and New Jersey, I don't believe, which is...
Get it together, guys.
Get it together.
All right. Well, Jeff has to go do a lot of important things. I have to edit this show, but we really appreciate you guys tuning in. Of course, if you like the show, like it, rate it, review it, tell us that you like it. We, of course, always appreciate your feedback, especially if it's nice feedback. I did get, wait for it, some wines the other day. One of our homies on Twitter sent me some wine, which I was very excited about. But of course, I can't actually consume the wine right now, but I'm going to be saving it. It was my boy Kian Tavakoli at Daft Cirque. I think he lives in Napa, which I'm super jealous about, but I was like,
so he probably sent you some good stuff.
Oh yeah, very good.
Yeah.
And I will be putting some on my Instagram when I start consuming alcohol again. which I am looking forward to. And yeah, we will just, if anyone else wants to send us gifts or anything, we don't have a Patreon or any other way, but we welcome bribes and gifts
take them
anytime.
Yeah, absolutely.
I thank you guys so much. Deuces.
The key to winning big is using every little bit of knowledge to your advantage. At OddsChecker, we give you the edge. Better odds, better picks, and better offers to make you a better bettor. Why settle for less? Quickly compare the odds at every sportsbook to ensure that you're getting the best price to maximize your return. Not only that, but we have experts on every sport, from hoops and football through to soccer and boxing. Our experts analyze the form and study the stats to deliver you totally free picks and parlays. OddsChecker also highlights the most lucrative welcome offers in the industry. If you're looking to open an account, then you are eligible for hundreds of dollars in totally free bets. If you're new to legal sports betting, then we're here to help, offering simple advice to understand betting guides and updates on your state's current legislative situation. Visit us at www.oddschecker.com/US. OddsChecker. Sports betting smarter.